Let's create a radio group widget so that we don't have to duplicate codes for each of the radio section for selecting different types of telescopes or the mount type or focus type. Let's go to the custom widgets and let's create a new dart file, and that will be radio_group, and this will be simply a stateless widget or maybe a stateful one. Okay, let's take an stateful one. So that will be radio group and import material.dirt, and as a constructor parameter of this radio group widget, we will provide few things like the group value, the label, the items, and a method or a callback method. So let me define those properties. First of all, it will be final string. Since we will deal with string data for each of our radio widget, that's why I'm taking string. So string group value, then final string the label, then final a list of string, and that will be the items, and finally a function that will take a string as argument, and the function name could be on item selected. Okay, and let me add all the parameters to our constructor, and that will be required also. So this dot label required, this dot group value, this dot items, and finally required this dot on item selected. Okay, now let's come to this radio group state, and here I will declare a variable as late. So late string group value, and in the init state I will just assign this group value to this group value over here. So that will be, so our this group value will be widget dot group value. Okay, so now let's come to this build function. Instead of returning a placeholder, let's return a card widget. And now we need to generate the radio button, but the radio button, the number of radio buttons will be dynamic, and it will be based on the number of items inside this list. If you go to our constant.dart file, see there are 3 lists, but not every list is equal items. So this list has 2 items, this list has 3 items, and this has 3 items. So based on the items, we need to populate the radio button, and for that we need to create the radio buttons dynamically. So let's go to the or maybe the radio group widget over here, and now the second or third or fourth item of this column will be dynamically created, and for that we will use the for loop. So for in I equals 0, I less than will be widget dot items dot length, and then I plus plus, and from here we will return a row widget first, because we need to put the radio button and a label text side by side. That's why I took a row, and as a children of that row, the first child will be the radio widget, and we have to provide a few values over here. So first of all, the value of this radio widget will be widget dot items, and we will have the index I, and the group value will be this group value, so no change. And for unchanged over here, we get the value, we get the item, and now we need to call setState and assign this value to the group value. So group value will be value, and after selecting and I think that should be not nullable over here. Okay, and after selecting each item, we need to call this callback function over here. So on item selected, and pass the value, that means the item, uh, over this as a parameter of this function. Okay, so out of the set state body, just call the widget dot on item selected and pass the value, and of course it will be not null. And after that radio widget, just take a text widget, and here we will simply show the item name, so items and the index, and will okay, so it is actually string, so every item is string. Okay, I think we're done with our radio group, and now we will use this radio group widget for each of the selection. That means we have to select the telescope type, the mount type, and the focus type. So let's go to the add telescope page, and after that card widget, that means this portion, let me have our new widget radio group, and we need to pass a label, our group value, and items, and a function, a callback function. So the label will be this, for example, we will use this radio group for selecting the telescope type. So the label would be select telescope type, and the group value will be our telescope utils dot, that will be a type list, because this type list will consist the telescope type. That means the telescope type could be refractor, could be reflector, or catadioptric. Okay, and I think I put it in the wrong place. This should be the items, so I need to pass the list to this items parameter, not here. So let me cut this and paste it over here, and the group value will simply the telescope type, and the telescope type will use this telescope type over here, because the default telescope type will be the first item of this type list, and that will be the group value. So the group value will be simply telescope type, and for on item selected, we get the value or the item, and we will simply put this value to our telescope type group value. So telescope type will be value. Okay, let me press hot reload and check whether we can see our desired output. So this is actually our radio group widget, and this is the label, and these are the 3 radio buttons, and these are dynamically created based on the length of the list, because this list is has 3 items. The length is 3, that's why we have 3 radio buttons along with the text widget. And this is selected by default because the default value of this telescope type is the first item, and also the group value, we assign the group value over here, and that's it. And we will use this as the value inside this group value radio group widget over here. The item's first name, or the first item, will be the value, and in that case the first item and the radio group will be same, and that's why it is selected. Now let me just copy this radio group widget for 2 more times. So this is the second time, and here we will change the label to mount type, and the group value will be mount description over here that we have declared over here, and it is assigned with the first item of mount list. Okay, and the items over here will be the mount list, and here simply that will be mount description. And now let me paste it for the final time, and this time the label should be the focus type, and the group value will be focus type. That should be focus list, and this should be this one, focus type. Okay, let me reload our application, and you see we have all the three sections to select the telescope type, to select the mount type, and also the focus type, and the default value is selected. We can also change, and it will change accordingly. If admin thinks the telescope type should be changed, then it will simply change the telescope type. Okay, now that we have our image section, our brand selection section, our telescope type, mount type, and focus type selection section, now it's time to add the text form fields so that we can take some raw input from our admin, for example, the telescope name, the dimension, and etc. So see you in the next lecture.